Now you will experience the full power of the dark side. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Today, I'm taking a look at the Star Wars Black Series Revenge of the Sith Darth Sidious by Hasbro. Starting with the packaging, and something occurs to me. All these years, and I've never reviewed one of these standard, normal Black Series boxes before. The different Star Wars movies and TV shows are color-coded, leading to some really good artwork on the side. It's a great portrait of Palpatine, and in the background has his office. We see that picture again on the back, along with a bio. One thing that baffles me is that they have this figure as listed as being number 1. I'm not familiar enough with this series to know, so are they just starting the numbering all over again? One thing you'll notice is that the box is at a slant, making it easier to spot different characters on the shelf. For packaging, I'm giving Palpatine 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and I've waited a long time for this moment. Emperor Palpatine is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, and he was absolutely the standout of Revenge of the Sith. This version is based on his climactic battle with Yoda. First things first, and the top of his hood sheave stands at just under 6 inches, or thereabouts 15 centimeters. Unlike the previous Palpatine, which had a completely cloth goods cloak, this one does have a cloth goods robe, but the hood is actually a sculpted piece. This makes all the difference. With the regular Emperor, that hood is kind of baggy and doesn't really ever want to properly stay down. Here, it captures the look perfectly. I would also point out that Hasbro did a very remarkable job of matching the colors. I do think a conversation could be had that if they were able to replicate that thread count texture, it would have really all come together, but as is, it does still really work well. This particular costume was very billowy, and Hasbro did a very good job on capturing that. There's that extra black layer up here. We've got those big bulky bell sleeves, and those have been nicely cuffed. And then you have the extra stitch work to give the illusion of multiple layers here as well. Unlike the original Emperor figure, which didn't have a whole lot of room to stretch his legs, this one is nice and roomy for lots of extra poses. Looking underneath, I am not enough of a Black Series expert to know if this is reused or not. I will say the straps around the calves are not accurate. Thanks to Yoda, and in the movie, we all got a pretty good peek under that skirt, and he was just wearing slacks and dress shoes. Whether it is reuse or not, though, for the purpose of this figure, it is more than fine. Otherwise, and in terms of reuse, the hands are the same as the original Palpatine, but once we see how swappable they are in playability, that's gonna make sense. The real showstopper, of course, is this magnificent head sculpt. Hasbro has done a remarkable job of recreating Ian McDiarmid's ghastly visage from the end of Revenge of the Sith, and the face printing goes a long way to pull that together. As someone who doesn't really buy Black Series figures, as soon as I saw this go up for pre-order, I had to have it. And you know what? It doesn't disappoint. The combination of plastic and soft goods for the costume is very effective, and that portrait is pitch perfect. For presentation, I'm giving Darth Sidious 5 points. If you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and give it a like. I very rarely do Star Wars videos, and unfortunately when you do something different, the algorithm doesn't really know what to do with you, so your likes would really go a long way to help. Moving on to Poseability, and not surprisingly, that cloth goods robe does add a wrinkle. See what I did there? On the one hand, it allows for a much greater range of motion and avoids traffic coning. It can, however, make finding some of the joints a bit challenging. From the top, and while there is a joint there, because of this hood, you are not getting anything out of it. Maybe a little bit of side to side, but that's it. Moving down, and the arms do raise 90 degrees. Doesn't appear to be any bicep swivel, but the elbows are swivel and single jointed. Despite being single jointed though, they do get a pretty decent bend. The wrists are swivel hinge, but because they're for fencing, they actually hinge side to side, which honestly is a feature I do appreciate. Peeking under the robe, and Palpatine has a ball jointed waist. He can arch back this far and hunch forward that far. He also gets a great amount of tilt and twist. Below the black belt and the hips are ball jointed. He can kick about 90 degrees, which given the tunic is pretty nice. You'll also notice a slit cut in the sides. That allows for a more than serviceable split. There is a thigh cut which runs parallel to the tunic, so that covers that up pretty nicely. Not that the tunic needs to cover it. He only has single jointed swivel knee, but it does bend at least a little bit more than 90 degrees, and the swivel compensates for him not having a boot cut, although with all this ribbing it would have been easy to hide one. And finally, moving all the way down, the ankles can hinge, and like Palpatine from Senator to Supreme Chancellor to Emperor, pivot. While by no means bad, articulation is one of the weaker aspects of this figure. The plastic hood is one of the highlights of the sculpt, but because of it you really can't turn his head. Unless, of course, you're okay with this. Instead, he has to turn his whole body, kinda like Michael Keaton's Batman. Additionally, since he's covered up anyway, I feel like there is a missed opportunity not to give him double-jointed elbows and knees. The Return of the Jedi version of the Emperor has them, and it does really add something. The soft goods do help, but for Poseability, I am giving Sidious 3 points. Moving on to playability, and to quote Anakin Skywalker, this is where the fun begins. First and foremost, Sheev has his signature lightsaber. The hilt on his was more elegant and they captured all those lines, and of course the blade is removable. Palpy can hold it in his left hand, just keep in mind he'll also be pointing, otherwise it fits comfortably in his right. Speaking of hands, he comes with a couple of extras. Extras that show off power. Unlimited power! They've been cast in a translucent blue, with the skin details painted over. Unlike the fencing hands, these ones hinge up and down, based on my googling, and they appear to be the same effects included with the throne room version of the Emperor, but honestly that makes sense. But playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your figure plays with others. For my only other Black Series Palpatine, and here we have the archive version of Return of the Jedi. Otherwise, and for some 3.75-inch Emperors, and here we have a few from Revenge of the Sith. For the only other figure I have in this costume though, and here's the Unleashed 360-degree version. At this point in my collection, the only other Revenge of the Sith figure I have from the Black Series is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and in fact my only other Black Series prequel figure is Jar Jar. Don't judge me, sir. That being said, my only 6-inch scale Yoda is the one from the Empire Strikes Back 2-pack. I do, however, have the New Hope version of Darth Vader, but for something a little extra special, and here we have the Sith Apprentice version of Darth Maul. This figure was a gift from my friend and friend of the channel, JB Toyman. The figure is well sculpted and mostly well painted. I love the attention to detail on the markings, but I will say the face is a bit of a darker red than the rest of the body. Articulation-wise, I can see people being annoyed by the single-jointed swivel elbows. Fortunately, he does have double-jointed knees. I also really appreciate this extra ball joint at the base of the neck, giving much more natural head movement. Most importantly, he has his signature double-bladed lightsaber. You can also split that into its two halves. This gives you a lot more display options. And of course, the blades come off. Huge thanks again to JB Toyman for this wonderful gift. To check out his channel, follow the link in the description below. Getting back to Palpatine though, and for a roll-to scale comparison, here's Darth Sidious with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Given just how lightly packed Black Series boxes usually are, I'm pretty impressed by Palpatine's piece count. Between his lightsaber and lightning hands, the Emperor has everything he needs to flex his unlimited power. For playability, I'm giving Palpatine 5 points. This leaves us nothing left to discuss but the price. This vicious Sidious is $24.99, which, given everything you get, I think is a pretty darn good deal. If you like what you see but are on the fence, I say do it. For price, I'm giving Darth Sidious 5 points, averaging out to a final total of 4.6 out of 5. For more Star Wars videos, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.